Welcome to the Mentor Studio, where today's thought leaders and leading entrepreneurs inspire and bring real-world ideas that help you take your career to levels you've only dreamed of. Now buckle in. Here's your host, Michael Silvers.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Donna Campbell, and I am the lead trainer here at the Mentor Studio. And welcome to the Mentor Studio podcast. Our guest today is a speaker, an author, and a successful entrepreneur. His background is so diverse and exhilarating. It includes powerboat racing. He's an internationally known artist and sculptor and has even been honored by President Clinton himself. He's been the general manager and vice president of sales and marketing in the television industry as a multi-business owner since 1972. Now that's 50 years. He is an expert in event production, security, risk management, and logistics. He has directed some of the largest motorsport sports events in the Tampa Bay area, including the APBA Offshore Powerboat World Championships. And for over 25 years, he was the director of security, the road manager, the operations manager, and a personal consultant to Tony Robbins and Robbins Research International with over 4 million international miles. He's managed an international medical team and was the first responder for participant suicide attempts and the Baker acting participants. He has developed a passion for speaking with a profound message that he shares in schools and prisons and teen groups on character, ethics, integrity, and forgiveness. He has even been featured in Oprah's magazine and O's Guide to Life and numerous other articles with his book, which was released in 2016, The Happiness Formula, The Ultimate Life Makeover. He has been out changing the lives of people all around the world with the happiness formula and starting the happiness experiment. So he is truly dedicated to being a Renaissance man after being born with complex PTSD, bringing back the foundation of character, integrity, and happiness to schools all around the world. So everyone, let's welcome here Gary King. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Donna. It's truly it's an honor for me and a great pleasure. And aloha, everybody from the Tampa Bay area of Florida, which is where I live. So I'm excited about this. I have spent actually around 31 years creating what I call the happiness experiment. And I will go into that in detail, and I'm sure it will mystify your audience and then some.
Nice. I'm excited, and I'm excited to learn more all about that. Now, I know you have a book called The Happiness Formula, and I read it a couple of times, and you're very open and very candid about a lot of the events in your life. So why don't you give your listeners a little bit of your background of some of the challenges and obstacles you had to overcome to get to happiness?
Well, like you had mentioned, I was actually born with complex PTSD. What does that actually mean? That means that when my mother was carrying me, my father was a pilot in World War II. So you can imagine the emotions she was going through while I was inside of her. Then when I was born pretty heavy. I was born 12 pounds and I was a breech baby. And my mother told me I almost died in childbirth, as did she. So that's where the complex PTSD started. Well, from there, it just compounded with things like many years ago, I accidentally ran over a 5-year-old boy and killed him instantly. It was not my fault. I was in a home invasion and left for dead. My only child, Jason King, which it's actually even more of an honor today. This is the 10-year anniversary of my son taking his own life. He did that on July 29th, 2012.
Wow.
I actually visited his grave this morning and put a little angel on his gravesite. My best friend was murdered on my birthday. There's 31 of these traumas. So I wrote one of the many things I've learned. I also had a near-death experience in the 80s. So my lens that I look through for life is very different from people's lens that they look through not having a near-death experience. So I see parts of life that the only way you could possibly see life that way is to have a near-death experience. And there's no shortage of people who have had them. Anita Moorjani, Colton Burpo. There's been movies made about it, and it's real. I mean, I can tell you, and I'm qualified to say this, you can't die. You just transition. So you cannot die. But that's my backstory. And what I learned is, and unfortunately, most men are taught that vulnerability is a weakness. No, vulnerability is a huge strength. Being vulnerable is a strength. That's why I wrote the book the way I wrote it. I wrote the first third of the book was my backstory. And then the second 2/3 was how to approach life. Now I'm writing my second book now, which is called The Happiness Experiment. And it will include a lot of the first book and the profound things that I've done in the last 5 years with the Happiness Experiment. It goes far beyond profound. It's because I track the results of the experiment. It all gets tracked. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, truly wow. And thank you for sharing that because it's not, I know, easy sharing parts of our life story, but it really connects us in a lot of different ways. And especially where there's a silver lining gift of happiness of what you learned on the journey with that.
Well, the interesting thing about what's happened to me, and it happened in the last 60 days, actually, as far as I know, and this is just in my own research, I spend 4 to 6 hours a day researching. I have never found anybody that's had 100% cure for complex PTSD or PTSD. All you can do is manage it. You can manage it with therapy. You can manage it with drugs. You can manage it with EMDR. You can manage it with all kinds of things. I had 100% cure 2 months ago. I have no symptoms of complex PTSD, none. And I've had it since birth with all those traumas. I have no symptoms at all. And I know how to teach that to other people. I know exactly what I did to get there. Exactly.
Absolutely. I love that. I truly, truly love that. Now, after reading your book a couple of different times, The Happiness Formula, I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
But the one question that I want to look at and address is, because at the Mentor Studio, we talk a lot about one team, one family, one community coming together, make an impact in the world. And in your book, in chapter 19, you talk about the day that you got the phone call that your son took his life.
Correct.
And you were on your way to Australia, but you decided to stay for the event before coming back to the United States, because you needed the team, the support, and what your role was there. Can you share with us a little bit more about that? Because it just felt like a real defining moment, because you made some choices right there for you.
Yes, I did. Here's what happened. At events, I was always first in and last out. So the night I arrived in the Gold Coast of Australia, that night, the arrival night, it was midnight, my phone rang, and it was my nephew to tell me what my son had done. And I didn't realize this either until the last couple of years. He suffered from PTSD, complex PTSD as well. He got that from me. He got that pattern from me. Okay. All right. So now I'm 8,800 miles from home, and I get that phone call. I was there for 10 days. So it was day one. I had to make a decision. I also kind of contemplated and thought that my son had purposely waited for me. I was in San Diego speaking at University of California, San Diego, which I did for 12 years. And I was flying from there to Australia. So I landed in Dallas. I called him as I was boarding the plane. I said, Jay, I'm on the way to Australia. I love you. I'll talk to you from Australia. He said, Dad, I love you too. That's the last words I ever heard from him. So while I was there in Australia, I knew the value of human connection. I already knew that part. Aside from what I did working in the personal development industry, I also spoke all over the world that had nothing to do with that industry. I was doing presentations on my own. So I stayed there for the connection to people that I'd been around for many years. Now, the trip home, if it wasn't for Qantas Airlines, and this is a statistic, I think the last time I checked, around 35% of parents that lose children to suicide, they do the same thing. On the way back, Qantas Airlines actually saved my life. There were flights, Qantas flights, where the flight attendant kneeled in the aisle and held my hand. Mm-hmm. They walked me through the whole 800-mile trip. The pilots knew, all the crew, they radioed everybody. And Qantas was amazing. And I wrote the CEO a letter. He responded to the letter. He said, "You'll always be part of the Qantas family." Now, you can imagine the level of trauma to travel 8,800 miles back home. And I almost missed one of my flights because I did my own son's eulogy, and I almost missed a flight and would have missed his funeral service. So you put all those things on top of each other,
right.
and that's called trauma, 10.0.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. How did the culture with Tony Robbins research, all of that being there at the event, how did that support you? I know you were there working the event.
Yes.
Share that a little bit about how the community came together in that team environment for you.
I had established very, very close friendships with a lot of the key people. So those key people, I spent my time around them because obviously there's participants. Some of the participants knew me, but I spent most of my time in close contact with the friendships that I'd made over the 25 years. That was what got me through it. And of course, at the end, the challenge was at the end, I was all by myself. I was the only person with a vehicle. I had to drive back to Brisbane by myself. And your mind, when you go through that kind of trauma, it just won't shut up, no matter what you do. So, yeah, that's what I did. I spent my time with the closest people to me that acted like a support, didn't act like they were a support system, an emotional support system.
Right. And the people closest to us are exactly, I think, where we need to be and where we want to be, because that's where the love is.
Well, that's the irony. In all my studies, of course, the most famous study on happiness is the Harvard study, which was created in 1938. They took 743 men and they tracked them through their whole entire life. They're in their 90s now. And the idea that study cost $20 million. And the idea was to determine what is the source of happiness? Where does it come from? Because we're taught that it's a pursuit, the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
No, it's not a pursuit. That's not what it is. It's a realization. And so this Harvard study, the bottom line, the results of the study, which is still going on now, the study is still taking place, is that deep human connection is the source of true happiness. Stuff and money is not the source of true happiness. That's the chase. That's what happens to people when they see. My main discovery in what I teach people is almost all humans manage the effects of their life. They don't manage the cause. Why? Because they don't even know what that means to manage cause. That's what I did. That's how I had this transition. And I completely cured complex PTSD because I started managing what's called the original cause. And when you manage the original cause, the effects no longer affect your life. So now in marketing, it's called top of mind. That's why marketers pay so much money for their logo, because they want their logo to be at the top of your mind. It's the first thought you think of when you go into a grocery store. Well, here's my top of mind thought. I am free. That thought overshadows everything. I am free. So every morning I walk on the beach. And that's what I do. Every day in every way, I am free, I am free, I am free. Every day in every way, I get better, better, and better. Every day in every way, I get healthier, healthier, and healthier. Mm-hmm. That's what I do because I'm reprogramming my subconscious mind. is what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
And anybody can do that. They just don't know how.
Absolutely. One thing that I've learned within my life is that no matter what life path you go down, there's always what I call those silver lining gifts. I
Correct.
used to say, it's not a matter of right or wrong. It's an experience. If you like the experience, repeat it. If you don't, do it differently.
That's
But
correct.
then I realized, like even with your story, events in my own life, that even if the experience wasn't good, there was still a gift in that. And
Of
for
course.
you, it's happiness and the happiness formula.
That's correct.
So share with us what's in the happiness formula.
Okay, so here's what I did. On November 7th, 2019, I started the experiment. And this is what I did. I went to a sign company, a guy I know very well,
Mm-hmm.
and I had this sign made. I had 10 of them made. This is made out of aluminum and fiberglass to last 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
The colors are very strategic. They're red and yellow for a reason. The heart is there for a reason. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I had 10 of these made. On November 7th, I put the second one, I bolted it to a St. Petersburg city limits sign. I bolted it right to the bottom of the city limits sign. I took a picture of it and I put it on a Facebook page called I Love St. Pete that has 90,000 followers.
Mm-hmm.
Within 12 hours, it went viral. I had all the television stations, Fox 13, CBS, ABC, they were all contacting me, all of them. And the first one was Aaron Murray from Bay News 9. They followed me around with a film crew as I put up these signs on telephone poles. So I started with 10. Today, there are approximately 350 of these happiness signs in St. Petersburg.
Wow.
What has that caused? See, I did 31 years of research behind this. This is very scientific. It's very technical. A lot of people just think, oh, there's a guy running around town putting up happiness signs. No, the guy running around town putting up happiness signs knows that those signs will change human behavior.
Right.
And I know exactly how and why it changes it because I track it. So I'll give you one example of hundreds. I was in the downtown area. I was walking down the sidewalk in the 600 block of St. Petersburg. There was a girl standing at a podium. She looked at me and she said, I know who you are. I used to work in Barnes and Noble. You were in there buying a book and I wanted to talk to you, but I was too busy. And you told me you were going to go out front of the store and put a happiness sign on a palm tree, which I did. And it's still there on a very busy highway. So she said, because I couldn't talk to you, I wrote you a letter. And I thought, she wrote me a letter. So 2 weeks later, I saw her. Mm-hmm. She sat down and talked to me. I was this table on the sidewalk. She sat down and talked to me. She said, I want to share something with you. I said, you wrote me a letter? She goes, yes. I have bipolar disorder and I have it really, really bad. My life is really, really hard. And she said, one day I just couldn't do it anymore. I got in my car and I drove to the Skyway, which is the bridge that my son jumped off. It's kind of the East Coast equivalent of the Golden Gate in San Francisco. It's enormous like that, and it's very far off the water. She said, I got in my car and I was driving to the Skyway, and I saw one of your signs. And it reminded me of your story because I'm on TV a lot. There's been 8 breaking news stories about this. She said, I remembered your story from TV. I turned around and went home. It stopped her from jumping off the bridge.
Amazing.
Now, I see her all the time. Her and I are really great friends. She's a different person now. And what these signs have done, I can literally, if there was time, I could give you 25 stories that are heart-wrenching. It'll make people cry when these signs, I have people call me and say, will you put one in my front yard? It just happened the other day. I ran to a young woman who just went through a horrible divorce. She has 2 boys. She's really, really struggling. And she said, will you put a happiness sign on a telephone pole in front of my house? Well, absolutely. I went there within hours of her asking me. And she emailed me and said, you have no idea how this has changed everything. Well, I do. I know exactly what it does. Yesterday, I was invited to an 8.5 acre complex for homeless people and veterans. It is an enormous complex in Clearwater, Florida. They house and feed hundreds of veterans and homeless people. I was invited up there. I spent 2 hours yesterday putting happiness signs all over this complex because I know exactly what will happen. I know what it will do to the behavior of people in that complex. Now I want to show you something really fascinating. So I went to my sign guy and I said, I want you to do something for me. I want you to make me a sign, a copy of the happiness sign. I'm going to give you a word that has 9 letters, just like happiness, because I want to show people how dramatic and what this actually does. So I had this sign made.
Okay.
Okay. Now, why did I do that? If I put 350 signs that say spaghetti all over St. Petersburg, they're on every major road, they're on every intersection, they're everywhere. If I put spaghetti, here's what would happen. You wouldn't be able to find spaghetti in the stores, they'd be sold out.
Correct.
But what's more strange is people would come home with the spaghetti and go, why did I buy this? I have no idea why I bought this. See, that's the side of it. That's the subliminal side. And on top of that, here's what people don't get. The word happiness, when you see that word, it produces endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin in the human brain when you look at that word. All right. So people's behavior is changing. Now I can't go anywhere in St. Petersburg. Every place I go, I'm recognized because of all the TV coverage. So it doesn't matter where I go. I can go into a Home Depot or I can go into a Walgreens. Now I'm going to share an experiment. I just spoke at a huge hospital complex in Dunedin, Florida. The staff and the residents were in the room. It was a packed room. I did an experiment, and I'm going to show you the experiment I did with this audience. And I've been doing this for 25 years on the road, this experiment. And it's shocking to people. They can't figure it out. So here's what I did. I had 2 envelopes. I asked the staff person, I said, would you come up here and assist me in this demonstration? I said, are you right-handed or left-handed? She said, I'm right-handed. I said, okay, I want you to take this envelope and put it in your right hand and hold it over your heart, okay? Just for a minute or two, I want you to just get a sense you're holding something over your heart. Now I want you to stick your left arm out, and I'm going to take 2 fingers and I'm going to put them on the back of your hand. And when I tell you to resist, just resist me pushing with 2 fingers. So I handed her this envelope. I said, resist, and I slammed her arm down against her waist. Then I gave her the second envelope. I said, I want you to put this over your heart, and I'm going to do the same thing. I could not push her arm down with 2. I couldn't push her arm down with my hand, and I can lift 200 pounds. I couldn't push her hand down. I said, now I want you to open the envelopes, and I want you to show the audience what's inside the envelopes. So she opens the first envelope where she had no strength at all, none. This is what was in the first envelope.
Yes.
Okay. This is what was in the second envelope. This is what was in the second envelope.
I love it.
Okay. This is my outgoing mail. All my outgoing mail. Why? Because 50 people handle this. The mail carriers, all the sorting, all the companies, they're the people who distribute the mail in big companies, they're handling the word. When they handle the word, it changes their behavior, but they don't realize it. That experiment, I've done that experiment for 25 years. People go, what in the world? I go, what you don't understand about your own body, you have an intelligence, but your body has its own intelligence. Your body senses the frequency or the energy of a word. I said, I can take broccoli and refined sugar and do the same exact experiment, and it'll turn out the same way. The broccoli will be really strong and the refined sugar will be really weak. Now, what does that tell you? Just nothing more than the common sense part. And I'm not going to go into this part because everybody knows this part. the last 3 years, words and images have been used. Okay. And those words and images, what they do is they make the human body really weak. But worse, those 3 words in the human body produce cortisol and adrenaline. And when you overproduce cortisol and adrenaline, it shuts your immune system off.
It does.
It turns it off. Now, in my lifetime, this is a sidebar. In my lifetime, I'm 77 years old. My voice doesn't match my age. I get that on the phone all the time. Your voice doesn't match your age. Yes, I'm aware. I go, in my lifetime, I've had 1 surgery. I was 4 years old and I had my tonsils out. The rest of my life, I'm supposed to have had 12 major surgeries.
Wow.
I tore both ACLs so bad I couldn't walk. I tore both rotator cuffs so bad I couldn't use my arms. I was supposed to have emergency cancer surgery within 48 hours. All 12 surgeries, I never showed up for any of them, not one of them. Now, This is my disclaimer. I'm not suggesting that people watching this should do this. I'm just saying this is what I did. And the reason I did it was because somewhere along the line, I recognized the mind-body connection, which unfortunately in Western culture, they don't teach the mind-body connection. So, when I do presentations, I ask the audience, I go, I'm curious, the last 20 doctor's appointments you've had, has a doctor ever said to you when you sit down, how's your stress level? How's your relationship? How's your job? They don't do that.
No.
But that's where everything comes from. I mean, that's what I did. This experiment, I started it to help my own complex PTSD situation. One of the news broadcasts, and I did not tell the person this in the interview, it's the CBS, one of the CBS ones. When the news anchor presented it, and then it shifted to the on-the-road reporter who was interviewing me, when the piece was introduced, the news anchor said, this St. Petersburg man cured himself of PTSD, putting up the happiness signs. I never said that.
Right.
He said that. But guess what happened? That's what happened to me.
Exactly.
I have 0 symptoms. I know why. I know how to teach it. And it's all about cause and effect. That's what it's about. Because when you're a child and you're 3 years old, parents call it discipline. That's what they call it. But a 3-year-old child takes it in as what? Trauma.
Exactly.
That's how they take it in. Trauma. Don't do that. Don't touch that. Open your mouth again. I'll get the belt. To a 3-year-old, they can't process that. They don't have any cognitive skills.
No.
Yeah, it's and here's the other thing. This I just came up with this a couple days ago.
Yep, I was going to ask you about that and what you're doing with the school buses.
All right, now imagine this. There are 480,000 school buses in the United States. Okay, that strip on there is a piece of magnetic material that I painted school bus yellow, and I stuck it on the side of that bus to cover up what was on the side of the bus. All 480,000 school buses in the United States, they all say the same thing on the side, and it's not school bus. It doesn't say school bus on the side. It says the district that it serves. Does that matter?
No.
What if the district stayed on there and you see, that image on there is 3 times bigger than this one. So if that was on the side of school buses, the behavior in the city would change and people wouldn't know why it changed. They would have no idea why it's changed. So because the brain takes the word and captures the word, and then when it's repeated over and over again in your mind, your behavior changes, because what you're actually doing is, and technically 90% of human DNA is programmable, 10% is not.
Exactly.
I can get really technical and go, you can actually change your DNA by the words. And I can use another statement that a lot of people will be familiar with. In the beginning, there was the word. Okay?
Absolutely.
In the beginning, there was the word.
First 4 or 5 famous words.
So these signs have changed, because if I were going to guess, I would tell you that 75% of the population of St. Petersburg knows about these, to the extent people write me and they go, my kids want me to drive around town like a scavenger hunt and look for happiness signs. I had people go, my grandparents want to ride around and look for happiness signs. They want me to drive them around and look
You
for
can have a scavenger hunt for the happiness signs in
Oh.
St. Pete's Beach.
Believe me, there's just isn't any end to it. And it's a word, but the colors and the presentation, it just changes everything. It changes everything. And just that experiment that I showed you with the envelopes, consider the human body has no physical strength when the words fear, paranoia, and hate are sealed in an envelope. The body has no strength. Well, if the body has no strength, and that's the environment, happiness is connection. That's what it is. It's connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you talked about my bio, I became an international artist for 14 years. I traveled all over the world as guests of different governments. I was a guest of the Japanese government, a guest of the Singapore government. How did I even learn to be a sculptor, a sand sculptor of sand castles that were 55 feet high? How did I learn? I volunteered. How did I get into the Robbins world? I volunteered. That's how I got into it.
Yeah, showing up to serve.
When I was at the homeless place putting up the signs yesterday, I met with the CEO. I met with the staff and the CEO. And I said, oh, I have to be a volunteer here. I have to be a volunteer here. It's a must. I mean, that's where the deep happiness comes from, serving other people, not by being served.
Right.
No, served.
You're absolutely right
serving
there.
other people.
And we speak such a similar language. So for me, I get called a mind whisperer out in the world because that 90% of that energy in the subconscious is reprogrammable. And that's what I do for other people instantly, is reprogramming from those lower vibrations to the higher vibrations for them. And the 3 core values people are always asking about are happiness, prosperity, and love. And prosperity is all things, not money, but being prosperous in all areas of your life. And with those 3 core values, now I know you have the happiness formula here, and you talk about the core values of the happiness formula. Can you share with us quickly what those are?
So when I created that formula, what I did was I have to make this thought-provoking. So I took the formula and I put it in the context of the periodic table. I had a ball cap made and I had the happiness formula, and then I put the formula on there and I wore that all over the world. And what I was doing, I was researching demographics. So who's going to ask me what the formula means? Is it going to be mostly men? Is it going to be mostly women? Is it going to be younger people? Is it going to be older people? Does it have anything to do with poverty levels or being wealthy? Nothing. It was across the board. So I'd be in a grocery store and a 19-year-old clerk would go, what does that mean? Or I'd be in UCSD doing a presentation and the college students are writing it down. Why did I do that? I was checking to see how much of that information I could pass out by being asked questions. So here's the formula. F2. Well, that's like H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. So I ask people, do you have any idea what the F means? And they go, fun. No, nobody has actually ever guessed it. So the F and the 2 means, the F stands for forgiveness. You must forgive yourself and other people always. And people go, forgive other people? Yes, forgiveness is a gift. You are not giving it to somebody who hurt you. You're giving it to yourself. It's a gift. You give it to you. You don't give it to somebody else, and you must forgive yourself. You must let yourself off the hook, because if you don't, that's another part of the formula. So the HT2, this is the big one. You have to be honest with yourself and truthful with other people. No exception. Now, I know the statistics. That was my first presentation in 1992 in Australia. I was asked to do a presentation. I'd never done one before. And it was a room full of 500 people who paid a lot of money to learn to be a leadership trainer. What's your presentation? What's it called? The Power of Truth. Okay. So I stood on stage for 90 minutes delivering a message, the power of truth, which was being honest all the time, because that's what happened to me in my near-death experience. I couldn't tell the proverbial white lie. There's no such thing. You're either honest or you're dishonest. There's no place in the middle. You can't reside in the middle. So that was my presentation. And it was dramatic. I got to the end. I was given the 5-minute sign from the back of the room. And I went, okay, I need to make this personal. How am I going to make it personal? So I'm standing on stage looking at the 500 people and I go, I got it. I challenge everybody in this room to be completely honest for 24 straight hours, no exception. It's called the 24-hour truth challenge. Mm-hmm. I said, here's what you're going to find out. You're going to all of a sudden be conscious of all the lies that are auto responses. Yep. You're auto responding. You don't even realize that you're auto responding. Then you're going to think about, why did I tell that lie? What was I trying to get away with or get away from? And why did I withhold the truth, which is also a lie? And I said, what you're going to find out is you're going to get a feeling right here in your solar plexus. And that feeling is called synchronicity. Your whole body is going to be synchronized. And the word for that, you don't hear it very often, is your constitution. That's all the parts are all together now. They're all working together. So I am. There was a married couple in the audience. I'd known them. They are personal friends of mine. They got married right out of high school. The guy was on my security team and his wife was a very good friend of mine. So 10 minutes after I end, he comes up to me and he goes, I need your help. What's the matter? He said, well, I took your 24-hour truth challenge and I went and told my wife that I'd had a bunch of affairs.
Wow.
Will you go talk to her? Yes, I will. So I went and found her and I told her 2 things. She didn't want to hear either of them. First of all, you have no idea how much courage it took for him to do that.
Right.
She didn't want to hear anything like that.
No, I bet not.
No. And then I said, there'll come a day when this experience is one of the most valuable experiences you've ever had in your life. Well, she really didn't want to hear that. Okay.
Nope.
So now I'm going to fast forward. Every 6 months I'm in Australia. Every 6 months I see him. Have you talked to her? No, she moved to the United States. 6 months later, have you talked to her? I had 1 phone call with her. 6 months later, have you talked to her? She's talking about moving back. Now I'm going to fast forward. I'm back at the same venue. It's 10 years later. I'm walking down a hallway. It's all glass and it overlooks a golf course. It's a beautiful day. There's a blanket laid out. There's 2 people on the blanket. There's 2 young children running around and there's an infant. And I walk out there and who is it? It's the 2 of them.
Wow.
And they both looked at me and she looked at me and said, you were right. And I said, I wasn't trying to be right. I was just giving you something to contemplate. Because what happened was she realized for him to do that, how much courage it took. And the chance of him ever doing anything like that again wasn't an option. The chance of him lying again, not an option. And she realized the value of that because statistically, well, it was 90-10. 10 years ago, it was 90-10. Now it's 98-2. And what I mean by that is 98% of the population is not completely honest.
I believe that. Yeah. And what does the SW stand for?
So the SW is self-worth. Well, if you don't forgive yourself and other people, and you're not honest with yourself and other people, self-worth is impossible. It cannot be. What it turns out when you do that kind of thing, it's called other worth. It's not called self-worth. It's called other worth. It's how you get other people to see you and accept you. Because as children, I call it the 3 A's. When I do presentations, I go, here's what you learned when you were a child. It's called the AAA Club, and it's not about cars, okay? The AAA Club is you learned to pursue what? Approval, acceptance, and appreciation. That's what you were taught, those three things, the three A's. And then you go through your whole life doing that, and you do it unconsciously. You're seeking approval, acceptance, and appreciation. Never to have been taught self-approval, self-acceptance, and self-appreciation. What a concept. That's called self-worth, self-appreciation, self-approval.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so all of this gets us to the happiness formula. So if we want or need one of those happiness signs, can we get one? How does that work?
Here's where I am with the happiness signs right now. The presentation, the happiness experiment presentation, I now have a serial number from the trademark office. Okay. The signs are in process. That's why they have TM on them. Okay. There's TM on the signs. So very soon, there'll be a way, very soon, because the book, I'm right in the process of the book as well. And the book and the sign will get released at the same time, as well as somebody gave me a suggestion yesterday, which is really brilliant. Called Adopt a Bus, where you go into a city and you adopt the school buses and you donate the money to have the image made to put on the side. Because you see, it's all upside. There's no downside to that.
Right.
There isn't any downside. It doesn't do it doesn't harm the bus. It doesn't harm the paint. It doesn't do anything. It's just all upside. So the formula F2 HT2 SW equals HF to the power of 10. The HF is happiness and fulfillment to the power of 10, because it exponentially grows. As soon as you start doing that, your life completely changes, totally changes.
Well, absolutely. And you're going to have to keep us updated on when all of that is done, because I need one. I need one not only for the school buses in the little town that I live in here in Montana, but even in my own home, because I put words around the house just for the very reason. So you'll see faith, you'll see trust, you'll see belief. I have the word love in my office. And I was realizing as we were talking, I don't have one that says happiness. And hearts are my logo. So I totally love that you have a heart on it. I love it.
So
I need a happiness sign. I need many.
All
I
you
want to share them.
all you need to do is message me.
Perfect.
And you'll get a surprise in the mail.
All right. I'm all in. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing all of your expertise. I feel like I can sit here and talk to you for another 6 hours, but we do have to come to a close.
I have lots more. There's no,
I know.
I could do 8 hours on the happiness experiment alone. So
I'm sure we might have to do a part 2.
Oh, absolutely. Because I get the results daily. So
yes.
Like I said at the beginning, it was an honor and a pleasure. And yes, I know how to cure complex PTSD and PTSD. And so I'm looking forward to this path, because it's the path to happiness.
And it is your calling and it's your purpose, and you love it and you're passionate. And I believe in everything that you are doing.
It is. It's great. And like I said, Donna, it was absolute treasure to be on here with you. I love it. And like I said, message me an address and you'll get a little surprise package.
I'm going to do it. All right. All right. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
We're honored that you invested time with us today at the Mentor Studio. Now, don't be greedy. Share this knowledge bomb with all your dope peeps on Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. Actually, we'll even pay you to do it. To get the deets, please check out thementorstudio.com.